Good afternoon. Thanks for everyone on the line for joining us today. This is Sarah Ernschwinder, Director of Marketing here at Tier 1, and I want to welcome all of you. At Tier 1, we're committed to helping organizations activate their strategies through people. And so we hope this kicks off a series of short webinars that provide insights that help you realize the full potential of your people. We'd love to hear where you're from today, so feel free to enter comments throughout. We'll also be holding our Q&A at the end, so feel free to ask questions as we go, and we will redisplay some of those so that you'll have some visibility to what we'll be covering in that section. So with that, I'd like to introduce today's presenters. Joining us, we have Caitlin Robie, a Senior Solutions Change Strategist here at Tier 1, and Dustin Shell, our Director of Innovation. Both Caitlin and Dustin bring a lot of experience working with organizations in different industries to help engage employees and ensure that individuals, teams, and the organization are ready for change. So Dustin, Caitlin, let's talk about how gamification and Adoptify can be part of that solution.
Awesome. Hey everybody.
Hi.
Hi. I need to take Sarah everywhere. She does such a good job.
I know. It's a great intro.
Good confidence boost to start.
I know.
So we're excited to talk with you guys today. Hopefully you had a chance to check out the video we sent ahead of time. If you didn't, no worries. We're going to do a little context setting here just to kind of get everybody on the same page about where we're at. So imagine, if you will, you are in a construction setting. This is kind of where our story started a couple years ago, and the whole company was about to change their technology system. Every employee was going to be affected. Roles were going to change, processes were going to change. Everyone had to learn a new system while they were doing their jobs. And oh, by the way, the system's not out, so we can't learn it yet. So if you've been through this process, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's pretty challenging to get everybody there at the same time with the least amount of reduction in performance as possible. In change management, we do all kinds of things to kind of reduce the risk and engage people through that process. Videos, training, webinars, community meetings, manager touch bases, webinars like this one. And those are all awesome. But what we found is there's a couple things that we can do better when we do this to engage people in that process, so it doesn't feel so isolating. Yeah. It's a really long process, and there's really hard to get good feedback loops in it. And so we kind of pulled from what we knew about gamification to create an experience that basically engaged everybody in the process, so when go live happened, everybody was ready and they had fun through the process. So we're excited to share some of our successes, and we've curated some principles that you can apply whether you use something like what we have or not. And the first one is make it relevant to your audience. So we talk about WIFM, but to me, this starts with really appreciating where people are at. It's being intentional about creating a narrative that connects back to the purpose. It's being intentional with challenges, not tasks, challenges, something that's hard that forces them to work, use their brain, reach out to somebody if they need help, and providing choice, giving them options. We're way more engaged when we feel like we have a choice in the matter.
The second one is to make it an experience that fits into the performer's life. And when we think about this, we want to make sure that it's elastic, that it's flexible and fits into the performer, and then it's time bound. We put things on a timeline, we chunk content into small bite-sized pieces that make it easy for someone to consume at the time that they need it, and also that they're not spending a ton of time going through those challenges, really making them short and easy. And then when it's possible, to find ways to make it mobile. Everybody has a phone and we're on them a lot. So the more that we can start to incorporate that into how we're building these experiences, the easier it fits into the performer's life. And the next one is make it competitive to create community. So one of the big things we think about when we're playing games and gamification is how do we get people to work together towards a common end game. So we have to define what success looks like at both an individual level and then at the team level. And we also have this idea of co-opetition. So this is taking the competition that is in a game, but also putting in some parameters around how are we working together to get to that common end game. And then lastly, social pressure. Fear of missing out is a real thing. People want to be part of what's going on in their social circle. So how do we start to make competition a way to build community?
And then we tapped into this a little bit, but making it measurable is really important. And games do this inherently. So there's built-in feedback loops, tracking progress, scores, badges, leaderboards. What they're doing is they're defining success. Here's how you win. Here's how you advance. Here's how you progress. So you're defining it from the front end, and then you're visualizing progress all throughout, which is motivating in and of itself. And then once you start getting to tap into that data, tap into that progress, what you can do is start gaining insights about, where are there problem spaces and where should I spend my energy supporting this change?
And when we think about change management and just any initiative that's going on in an organization, this is always a really hard one to get into, measuring your individual success and how you're progressing, but then also from an organizational perspective, how do you know that the organization is effectively moving in the direction you need them to move? So this is where we are going to transition into a case study and really dive into Adoptify and how we've taken these principles along with best practices in change management and behavior change and created an experience where we are putting that user, that person that's going through the change, in the driver's seat of the experience. So how are we defining that program around them so that they can start interacting with the change in a way that doesn't feel like it's being pushed on them? Because a lot of times we hear, everything's pushed down on me, there's so much change going on, I have no idea how to consume all of it. So what we do within Adoptify is we create these role-based experiences, and we're looking at it from what do we need this individual to do. So we're going to look at it again from that user perspective. So think of yourself as someone that's going through a change right now. You might be experiencing something in your organization, or you might relate to something that you've seen in other businesses. So in this example, this is somebody that's a plant manager. She's responsible for making sure that all of the inventory in her plant is up to speed. There's the right numbers, that the product's actually being shipped out to the customers. And at the same time, she's responsible for the safety of the plant, all of the employees. And there's a lot of change going on in the organization. So she's heard about new systems that are going to be put in place, new processes that are going to help streamline how her plant runs and all the operations.
And she's thinking, all the other stuff I have to do.
And everything else that I have to do on top of it. So it's a very overwhelming time for her. And so she comes in and she sees this invitation to participate in a challenge. And the invitation lays out what the challenge is, how it relates to all of the change that's going on in the organization, recognizing that it's super hard to go through this and that we want to start streamlining things and make it more fun for her to go through this and to give her the actual things that she needs to do on a weekly basis based off of everything that's going on around her. So we're really starting to piecemeal that information to her. And we're also laying out what are some of those challenges and what are the rewards that are going to be associated with them. What does winning look like as you're going through this? So inviting her to participate in this experience.
So real quick before you go on, I get asked all the time, like, what does it take to be, what's the difference between like an instructional designer or anyone who designs something in the change or learning space and a game designer? To me, if you go back, like, this is the fundamental difference is you're starting with a choice. And if you think about the last time you went to play a game at home or with your friends, how does it start?
Yeah.
Anybody want to play a game? It starts with an option, because if you don't give people a choice, they automatically shut down because they haven't agreed to the rules of the experience.
Yeah, and this gives them the parameters of how do I interact with this change in a way that's going to be the most meaningful for myself and the organization. So she follows the link to log in to the challenge site and is taken through a tutorial again that lays out what is this challenge, what is she being asked to do, how is it going to help prepare her, the organization, her team, the plant that she manages, and then also some basic navigation of how the site functions. Then she's...
Real quick, I'm so sorry.
No,
go. We can't pass this up. So if you look at that, like, there's a component of aesthetics. When you measure engagement in games, there's a whole aspect of aesthetics that actually has been proven to engage people in it. So using a narrative, bringing it to life in a visually appealing way, in a user interface that they're used to in their day-to-day lives, actually plays a big part in getting people to want to keep participating.
Yeah. And also from a change perspective in general, there's other ways that we're trying to incorporate this narrative and this theme that you're kind of starting to see. We're playing that out through the entire plant and everything that's going on in communication. So how are they starting to see some of these icons and characters, the narrative and the language that we're using so that they can start to resonate with it and it feels more natural. So then she's taken to the dashboard and she can see how many weeks of challenges she is completing in the week that she's on. So again, it's showing how many, what is that timeline that I'm going to be working against. So here you can see it's 10 weeks. And then specifically, what do I need to do for that week? So you can think of this as the checklist. If she comes in every week and completes the tasks that are here, she is again, not only helping prepare herself, but helping prepare the plant. And these challenges are going to relate to things that she's already been asked to do. So it might be how she has to set up her plant or things that she needs to do to get her team ready. It's related to communications that are sent out, reinforcing what specific piece of information she should have retained from it. or as we get closer to go live, getting into the more specific details of the knowledge and skills that she will need to have to be successful. She can see the progress that she's making in the bottom right. How far along this journey is she, and how far along is the entire group. She can see the leaderboards, and then as she goes through and completes challenges, she'll see the number of tickets that she has complete increase, her rank, and then again, she'll see what she's earned as she's going through this.
The feedback we get from this, just this view alone, is that in one place I get a sense of the journey I'm on,
yep,
and what I got to do to be like a team player to get to that end state. This is where one of my favorite stories, guy on a concrete pour was like, hey, it just takes 5 challenges. I know I can get it done, and make sure I'm ready to go for that thing,
yeah,
and you're ready to go. So you're not questioning the whole time.
Yeah, and each of these challenges is only taking a few minutes to complete, and as she starts going through them, she can realize how easy it is to just block some time off, and it doesn't feel, again, as overwhelming as all of the communication she might be getting, everything that we're pushing out on her. It streamlines the experience. So she can click any of the challenges to see what they are, and there's several types of challenges that we have built in. There's open comment, which is just an opportunity to provide feedback. So if there are things where we want to hear what her experience is like, what's going on within her plant, we can capture information that way, just a self-reflection. There's fill in the blank, where she could enter in specific information, potentially go live dates or cutover timing, things that she needs to complete.
Secret codes on posters.
Secret codes, meetings that she would have to attend and give out a code word. Then there's scavenger hunts, which are really cool. These are really getting people to go out and interact with the information in a different way. So we can hide different links and tokens within resources. So if they have to go out and find job aids or complete videos, we can hide those within the course for them to find. We can also embed them in training environments, so a specific page they would have to navigate to. It's really a great way to get them out of this and interacting with the information in a different way. And then lastly, we have multiple choice, which is what you see on the screen here. And so after she completes this, she can click Claim Your Reward to see how many tickets she completed, and then a description on how that, what those tickets go towards for her, and the drawings and different prizes she's eligible for, the overall progress of how her team is doing, and how her participation not only helps herself, but helps the entire company. And again, she can see then the number of tickets she received for that specific challenge when she goes back to the dashboard. The other thing that she can do from here is to nominate a champion. If someone went above and beyond to help her complete that challenge, or if she helped someone else complete a challenge, we want to make sure we're recognizing that. So getting into that collaboration and supporting your team to work towards a goal, she can nominate someone and write a review, and then on a weekly basis on the back end, the change team is identifying who is the champion of the week, who is the person that's gone above and beyond, received the most nominations, or had the best write-up for how they supported someone.
Yeah, I think that whole component of engaging with what we're finding throughout the experience, because remember, this is happening each week. So each week we're sending out a new communication to kind of give live updates on where the teams are at and who the champion of the week is, and as a way to kind of engage everybody who may not even logged into the site, kind of tap into that FOMO piece.
Yep. And then there's also a couple of dashboards that capture that same data. So here we can see all of the champions, who's received a nomination, and then who's the champion of the week. So we can see who's rising to the top, which is great from a leader perspective too, because managers can come in here and see who from their location or on their team is receiving the most nominations, so they can see who the early adopters are. And then the other leaderboard shows team progress, and then also the leaders within their specific team. And this again shows progress. So how is each team competing against each other? How are they working towards their shared goal? And in the bottom right, we're seeing overall percent completion. So as an organization, how are we moving towards completing all of our challenges and really getting ready for the change?
The way this plays out, so I think we had an audio, are we good now? Cool. The way this plays out is actually really, really cool. You know, this is kind of a boring dashboard because everybody's rocking out. And by boring, I mean pretty incredible. Yes. When it's really interesting and really helpful for the team implementing the change is when you've got a group that's not leading the pack. And what that does is allows us to say okay, this is where we spend our energy. And where do we start? Oh, The organic power users who have been engaged in the process on the champion page, we go to them and we say, what's going on? How can we help? And it just creates this this synergy that wasn't there before because we have visibility and everybody has visibility.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that just showing people's progress, knowing that they're in last place is a motivator to engage. And the last place isn't a bad thing. It just means that you got to work a little harder.
Yeah, and then also on the leaderboard, getting into the social pressure. Nobody wants to be last when everybody has visibility to it. And just the encouragement that you can get through the champions and nominating each other and just working as a team towards that shared goal.
Yep.
So the last piece in the demo that I want to look at is things from the leader perspective. So those that are responsible for driving the change, this could be somebody that's in a formal change management role that is responsible for the overall program, or this could be leaders within the organization, so a manager or a VP that wants to see progress and see how things are progressing. So there's a lot of stats on the back end that we're collecting, and again, this gets into making it measurable. We have a lot of data now that we don't have in traditional change programs where we're just sending out surveys. This is collecting on a by wave, so for every wave that would be involved in the rollout, whether it's one or an infinite number when it's really long change projects, we can then see what teams are involved in that specific wave, how are they progressing towards their goal, and then also we can drill down to see at the role level and the individual level so that we have all of this data where we can start to pinpoint and diagnose where there might be risks that go live, and then we can start to mitigate some of those. So if we see a specific role or team is falling behind, we can then target what we need to send to them to ensure that they're getting the information that they need, or that we can then, after go live, make sure that we're continuing to send follow-up information, additional training, aligned to the areas we think they might be struggling with.
And we designed this for managers who are already too busy anyway.
Yep.
And so we're getting incredible feedback from them because they know exactly how to spend their energy. Now we talk about voluntary participation, and that's cool. We gave them a choice, but at the same time, their manager saying, hey, I noticed you weren't engaged in your challenges. What's going on? It doesn't have to feel like you have to do this, but now we've given the manager a conversation piece to kind of engage their team.
Yeah, because from a leadership perspective, it's also overwhelming to know how to best support your team. So this gives you then that data and visibility into where to make the best decisions and the best use of your time. And so quickly, just a few things on the results that we've seen. We've rolled this out with groups as small as 200 and as large as 10,000 users at once. And on average right now, we're seeing over 98% engagement. So 98% of those that are invited to participate are actually completing their challenges and staying engaged through the entire experience. 91% of the challenges are being completed on time. And we're really seeing a positive behavior shift. You can see it just from the feedback we're getting in some of the open comments, what people are saying about each other in the nominations, and then just some surveys that we've sent out. People are really excited about this. It feels less like a push down and more of an experience that they are going through and driving the change and really being a part of it in a fun way.
My favorite story is the language shift. Instead of talking about the drama of the change, they're talking about the experience that they're part of. And that is a massive shift when you're talking about attitude.
Yeah, and just getting people talking about it in a different way. Exactly. It's not a bad thing. People are talking about the change. So, we're going to open it up for Q&A, but one also just kind of reflection for you to take back with you, but how will you make change measurable and fun and apply some of the principles that we used today? But we'll hand it over to Sarah. She's going to read through some of the questions that we've received.
Absolutely, thank you. So our first question from Kyle is, can you give us some real world gamification examples that have worked in addition to Adoptify? Are there other things that you've seen that folks have used that they can incorporate into their learning?
Kyle, awesome question. Depending on the context that you're looking at, even Deloitte has a famous study out there about they have a leadership development program. They did simple gamification with some badging, so basically earning certifications and kind of different ways of exploring the program. And they found a massive jump in engagement and loyalty to the program. So people were staying in it longer and they were doing more when they were in the program. So that's one classic example people point to. There's other types of engagement, meaning we've seen, we designed a game for sales associates on the floor and found people were completing it, but they were actually coming back to it because it was challenging. And so you're seeing loyalty to an e-learning course, for example, that has some gamification elements because it was hard and we showed them that they didn't master it. So just simple things like that, I think, get to what we're trying to accomplish when we're talking about either mastery or knowledge retention.
Great. And a question from George. What are some recommended metrics or KPIs to measure impact and the benefit of this kind of implementation?
So a lot of that we tend to define in the upfront. So what is the end goal that you're trying to achieve from an adoption perspective or from a behavior change? Are there certain KPIs that the business is trying to move towards? And then we're measuring those iteratively throughout the entire program, not just through Adoptify, but through surveys, through focus groups. But we have to define those in the upfront, and we're also building those into the game. So every single challenge is tied to a KPI that was predefined. So we're looking at what are those behaviors and those measurements that are the most critical for the business, and then we're tying the challenges to be associated with those. So it's also forcing us to streamline how we're targeting our activities to be tied to those KPIs that we think are going to drive the success of the project and get the most return on investment. But we're looking at, for the example that I gave there with the case study that we walked through, we were actually looking at performance of the business and how quickly people were able to get through the change curve afterwards. We knew that there would be a little bit of a dip in performance after go live, but how long would that be sustained? And we had a goal of, we didn't want it to be sustained beyond 3 months. So looking at those metrics too, to see what's the dip in revenue and how quickly can we overcome that, or what is the dip in time to fulfill an order for a customer. So some of those just operational metrics in addition to the behavioral pieces.
Great. So then another question about, this is from Grant, how can you balance asking the employees to voluntary versus involuntarily complete activities in a hierarchical organization structure? And a follow-up to that, does it matter what type of culture it is to change this strategy?
I would actually love to get both of our responses on this because you're going to get slightly different versions. I think all the altruistic version will probably come from me. Because in the altruistic version to me is we all subscribe to systems every day, and whether we agree to or not. And so, for example, like just being part of your company, you have already basically agreed to play the game, essentially. And so if voluntary participation and experience is kind of an extension of this thing you've already agreed to in the first place. It's but what we are doing is we're giving them that like additional feeling of we want you to want to participate, not you have to and you better.
Yeah.
So just that subtle shift, I think, is a big part of this. And so I think that can be accomplished in any culture, and it's being done very differently depending on who we're working with.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is hard because there's a lot of organizations, and it kind of comes down to the culture, that are going to make these types of things mandatory. But as Dustin always tells me, if it's mandatory, it's not a game. Yep. We have to invite them to participate. So the invitation really is just opening that door. The big thing that we've seen that's driven change within organizations to get them more involved in a different way is to get leadership involved. So it's really critical that we're getting leaders bought into this at the beginning, and that they're making the goals that we're trying to achieve a part of the experience they're creating within their local team. And again, then it starts to, from the ground roots up, it starts to create an experience where everybody wants to be a part of it. And then when Adoptify rolls out, or we start to implement some of those gaming principles, the leaders are already bought into it, so they're participating. And then the team wants to do what's best for their group, they're bought in. So it's bigger than just rolling out Adoptify and applying those principles. It's how do they become a part of your organization and how you're working together. And I've seen it in very traditional cultures that don't like to play games and have fun. It really does start to shift if you can start with leadership really getting their buy-in, and then inviting people, and then again just reinforcing and encouraging people. We are seeing strong engagement, which, I mean, was kind of an experiment at first, but it's working to see that we really are getting really, really good engagement through that approach.
All right, we have time for one more question. So Tim is also interested in early CM metrics and measures. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So early, I'm assuming just related to a general change program, or is it specific to what we're seeing within Adoptify? Because we look at measurement beyond just Adoptify typically, like we're trying to incorporate change management metrics in the upfront too, considering Adoptify is typically the back like 8 to 10 weeks of a program. What we have found, we typically start measuring several months before a change is going live. And what we've seen is, a certain rate of what I would call readiness or engagement in the change. And we're seeing that, we're measuring the rate of that before we go live, and then the rate once we start with Adoptify. And we're seeing a 33% increase in the rate to engagement and the rate to readiness when Adoptify is out there versus more of like a 9 to 10% per month engagement in the change. So we see a really large spike. Now, is that a result of it's getting closer to go live, or is it that the game itself and having some of those principles that are forcing people to interact in a different way driving it? But we do measure several months before. And again, it's tied to what are those key KPIs and the behavioral metrics that we want to see at go live, and also tied to what is the overall organization's goals with the change they're implementing, so that we're measuring progress towards that. So everything from awareness to knowledge and skill development to actual sustainment and retention of information.
Awesome, thank you. So that's our last formal question. If you have other questions, feel free to email us. But again, thank you all for joining us. We will be emailing out the recording as soon as that is ready. If you're looking for more information on Adoptify, we do recommend you check out adoptify.com. Regarding the session in general, we'd love your feedback in the survey, which I have added to the comments, or if it's easier, just type a quick comment on whether or not you'd find more of these micro webinars useful, and if so, on what topics. So to wrap up, at Tier 1, we believe the potential of any organization lies within its people. So we hope today's discussion allows you to engage your people a little more than yesterday. Thanks again for joining.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take care.